For those serious about the sport of fitness, now is the time to build strength, gymnastic skills, and improve your overall capacity. We have divisions for RX, intermediate, masters, and elite athletes. For more information, go to trainingthinktank.com.
Caffeine on top of my coffee.
That's nothing. That's like half of what you get in a small Starbucks.
And these black chairs just aren't slapping like the red ones.
No,
but the red ones kept
good.
falling, so I brought in the black ones. So I'm going to have to today unscrew the bottoms of those chairs, put on the red ones.
Get a drill, and I'll help you with
I
it.
mean, y'all just look bland.
The ones that like lower
Every
down.
single one of those behind the camera, they sink.
Yeah, they sink slowly.
Exactly. And all of a sudden, you're down like this. You can't see anything.
Like eating an unflavored Pop-Tart.
Oh, man.
Hello.
What is your favorite flavor?
Of a Pop-Tart?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I'm kind of an OG regular strawberry guy.
You don't like strawberry?
Brown sugar cinnamon.
Okay,
Give it
those
to
are-
me.
yeah,
those are
legit.
good, but like
The strawberry, the OG strawberry is really good. Especially my favorite when I was a kid was the OG strawberry that had the little sprinkle, like it had the frosting and the little sprinkles on it.
top. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think that's the only way they make those now.
Really? They don't make like OG basic
I haven't
strawberry
seen
anymore?
those. Maybe they do.
I don't know. All right, so Masters.
Yeah. Hey, now
What age group?
The quarterfinal season has officially ended, and Mr. Ruth here has qualified for semifinals. So
Unofficially.
Unofficially. Okay. Officially,
Oh,
unofficially.
I hope this gets
I had, dude, I had
Better not get any no reps.
I had a validation on workout 2A and 2B. I got an email yesterday, which would have been Sunday, and I had the little green check in the app that said my score was validated, and I woke up this morning.
And they said you have some no reps.
So to an 8-rep penalty on workout 2A. And I was like, but my appeal was, but you already validated my score.
Well, hold on. Give everyone some context before we jump into the workouts, because
Also, before we jump into the workouts, we just did commentary over which workout was that?
Workout 4.
Event
Which
4.
was the 15.5
15.5
repeat.
workout.
And
Yeah.
so if you haven't seen that video, go check that out.
Yeah. Going back to the no reps, your judge gave you 9 no reps in the workout for the same reason, but then CrossFit came back and said you have 8 reps that were no reps. So
Correct.
essentially, you got double no rep for the same exact reps.
It's possible that
Yeah.
that happened, right? So they may be giving me an 8 additional. We'll find out when I
you need some clarity there.
I'm sure my appeal will be denied and that I will take
Well,
the
do they
8-rep
at least
penalty.
have to come back with which reps were wrong? Like, do
They
you get
should.
No, so they do not.
Oh, that's waxsauce.com/seriously.
I agree with Brannen that they should, but they do not offer that level of clarity or transparency.
Yeah, especially at this level, I think they have to, just so that we're getting the right people to semifinals and then the right people from semifinals to the games, especially when everything's online now for Masters.
So it's just like a generic email saying like, nah.
Yeah, it was like you had 8. We
just said
penalized you because some reps your hips did not meet the standard
Come on,
for the
CrossFit,
GHD.
do better.
My biggest issue with them not telling me which reps is I can't go back and review my video and figure out which reps they're
Correct.
referring to.
Right. And if those were the no reps that you got for that same thing, your hips started sliding as you went through
Yep.
because
And so my judge
you move
was-
so fast, your judge no repped you.
Yes, and he no repped me for him. The problem, here's the big kicker. I had to mute the video because of copyright infringement issues.
Come on, YouTube.
Yep. So I had to mute the video, which means that HQ, when they're watching it, probably never heard him saying no rep, right? So
Yeah.
there's no way for them to
He's got to give the
confirm-
signal. That,
No, that
Oh,
was
yeah.
a
International
no rep.
signal.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're moving that fast, they probably can't get, because I
Right.
mean, think about how fast you're cycling a GHD. It's like rep.
and it was
rep,
only 9
rep.
each round. Yeah.
Yeah. Regardless, I'm still in an unofficial qualifying spot afterward, and you know what? I did have some legit reps where my hips were traveling forward. Like it's just something that I do. I pull myself forward.
Yeah.
When I'm starting to slide off.
And
the
you'll
back
work
of
on
the
that
GHD.
before semifinals and the games and
Yep.
make sure that they're clean. All right, so let's break these workouts down. The thing that I was most surprised about, I actually don't even think it was surprised because I knew they were going to be different. But in the individual workouts, which Max and I talked about in a different podcast, almost every workout had this like extreme bottleneck. So workout 1, the handstand push-ups. I watched Jake Berman, who can do 100 handstand push-ups in 4 minutes, do singles on that workout. It was just such a bottleneck, even for the best. And then the rope climbs in one of the workouts, the heavy clean and jerks. Like there was one thing in each workout that kind of slowed people down. Whereas in the age group workouts, it was almost like much more well-rounded, more like true capacity based where you have to move the entire time. And to your point, in that workout, 6 handstand push-ups, everyone's moving fast, 9 GHDs, 12 box jump overs, everyone's flying through it. There is no specific bottleneck. So quick thoughts on that, and then let's kind of dive into the workouts.
If you think about the workouts as an aggregate, the only places where there could be, well, I shouldn't say the only places where there could be potential bottlenecks, but for athletes that are likely to qualify for the next stage, one bottleneck is the double dumbbell overhead walking lunge. I think especially for some of the older masters athletes who have compromised overhead position, that's one potential bottleneck.
But not in the younger divisions.
No,
we watched a lot of people.
In the 35 to 39 division.
It was a sprint still there, and it was only 50 feet, so it's not like doing 21 handstand push-ups at the
What's
end of
the oldest division they have right now?
65 plus.
Yeah.
65.
Yeah, so then there is a bottleneck there, but that's true for any movement that's overhead.
Yes, as you get into the older age divisions, the bottlenecks become more apparent. So that's one potential. Then I think the bench press, depending on people's, again, for the 35 to 39 division, a 185 bench press for 25 reps is not either enough reps or a heavy enough weight to be a true bottleneck. But as soon as you start to go into some of the later age divisions, it becomes a huge bottleneck. So
the problem I have with that, and not to be negative to start, but they did the same loading for 50 to 54. Now, yes, it becomes a huge bottleneck. Why not have some kind of variance there? So like 35, 39, 40, 44, use 185. And then 45 to 49 and 50 to 54, whatever. They can choose what they want to do, but then they lower the barbell.
To 165.
So it's at least similar in time. But a 185 bench for the 53-year-old male is much different than the 38-year-old male.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I actually thought that they adjusted it for the teens. So I was watching Caden who won, unofficially won the 16-17 men's division. Yeah, Caden. Shout out for that.
We have a full workout of him on the way as well.
You should definitely watch that.
Yeah,
kid is so impressive. But he only had a 135 bench. So why are they adjusting it for the kids that are going to literally be in the open division next year? So he's 17.
Yeah, and strong.
And next year he might have 225 in a workout. Why are you giving them 135 and then giving us 185? Like that division, that I feel like you're selling that division short. He had 65-pound thrusters for the 15.5 and a 135 bench. You're selling that 16-17 division short. Those guys are strong.
Yeah, it also changes the dynamic of the workout because then it is a full-on sprint in those workouts. And this is, again, to my point of the difference in individuals and age group. Age group, you almost had to move fast the entire time. And in individuals, it was more like, I need to strategize this workout. People that are amazing at chest to bars and bar muscle-ups broke those up into sets of 3s and 4s for the individual last event just so that they can move fast on rope climbs.
On the rope, yeah.
Yeah, whereas here in the age group, everyone had to think about how fast can I move throughout the workout. It was like more true kind of that old school CrossFit.
Yeah, I think there was definitely different biases in the programming. And maybe that was intentional. Maybe they wanted to reflect that. And now the age group semi is going to be more bottlenecked with higher level skills.
Yeah.
You know, like I think about, for anybody who is moving on, think about this. There has been no deadlift cycling. Mm-hmm. So be ready to cycle some deadlift. There's been no overhead squats. We've barely touched a dumbbell outside of a couple of double dumbbell lunges, right? We haven't touched those kettlebells that they said to include in the equipment list. Crossover singles haven't shown up. We haven't done V-ups, which regardless of the controversy around V-ups this season, like all those masters athletes that are moving on, you better be ready for some V-ups.
There might be surprise things from the equipment list that just changes all the time.
Yeah. Well, before we talk about the surprise thing there, just to your point, I think that's why you need to have a coach at this time of the season. And if you're in our online program and you do our semifinal peak, everything that Kyle just mentioned is in week 1 of the program, which will start next week. We'll have a deload this week. And
how'd y'all get so smart?
Well, I mean, we're talking about these things and going through the checklist of all these things that they said were going to be in there that haven't been in there, the things that may be tested and the things historically that have been tested. We're kind of aggregating all those things, and then we have a checklist that we go down. But yes, I think especially the hinging off the ground, there's going to be some kind of high volume pulling.
There was zero, unless you count the shuttle as a hinge, there was zero hinging in age group quarters.
Yeah. So I think you'll definitely see that. And some of the
count
other things.
The shuttle as a hinge.
I mean, it kind of is.
That's a lot of hinging.
It is a lot of hinging. It's a 200.
Too much hinging for
200 ground touches. You know what I mean?
It definitely was. That was probably my least favorite workout. I actually really liked workout 1. I liked workout 2. I absolutely love that they retested 15.5. That to me was.
Of course you do, because you didn't have to do it.
I didn't have to do it. But that was one of the most painful workouts that I've ever done as an athlete. And it also, there's just no place to hide. So you're going to find the type of athlete that you want at the games. That can't be the only test, right? You need some of those high level skills. But since you had some of those in there with the rope climbs and you had the muscle ups and the chest to bars and all those things, overhead lunges, all these high level things were touched. having something that's just like pure old school CrossFit is nice. And I wish they would have done that for the individuals as well.
So you say that's your favorite. That was my least favorite just because of how painful it was. I swore that I would never.
Agree that that's a good
competition standpoint.
Yes, it's a good test, but I just didn't. I didn't want
I agree.
I didn't want to do it.
If I had to do it, I would.
Do you remember your time, Brannen?
I don't. You could look it up.
Max was coaching you then, right?
Yeah,
I had your score.
6 minutes something. I don't know.
Yeah, he was probably telling me Brannen's close to you. You better get. But no, I think my favorite was probably the workout one, the double dumbbell walking lunge, gymnastics one. That was really well programmed. If you overshot on the toes to bar early on, your grip was done and you were just demolished by the time you got to the bar muscle up. So it required a little bit of strategy, but you had to stay moving. You couldn't take these long chalk breaks and things like that to really recover between the stuff. So like it was a good blend of like, metabolic components and some skill components.
Well, I think I mentioned this in the last podcast, but I would have loved to strap a heart rate monitor on someone doing event 1 of individuals versus event 1 of age groups, because it would have been much. Was
event 1 of individuals
the handstand push-up?
I did them both, and I had my whoop on both.
Yes. See, that's what I want to see, because once you get to the handstand push-ups, it's got to be pretty low, at least halfway through.
No, I took my whoop off for event 1 of age group, because with my grips and the wrist wrap things that I wear, so I only have it for
all right. Well, you did both, so just subjectively, what was the difference in those two as far as just like heart rate and respiration rate?
Okay, so age group event 1. The double dumbbell lunge gymnastics, that one was way more, like my heart rate was way higher. I probably was in zone 5, if you use the whoop zones. I was probably in zone 5 for the last, I don't know, probably 2 minutes of the workout.
How's those zones? Do you think they work or not? I've never heard your opinion on that.
I use their zone 2. It's the only one that I use in training because I do.
But I mean, their read on that is accurate or no?
No, if I will say that if I wear my polar heart rate, one that, it's an actual heart rate strap, that's way more accurate. Like the whoop will have like big dips.
Yeah.
So I'll be riding the Concept 2 bike at my zone 2 pace, and my whoop will say, oh, your heart rate just dipped, down to 100. But my polar is like, no, you're still chilling right in your zone 2. Right. So I would say it's...
Sorry, a little tangent, but I remember you used to shit on the whoop a little bit. Yeah. Has it gotten better, or is it still...
It's definitely gotten better. And the whoop is better. So here you go. Here's a hierarchy. The whoop is better than my Garmin. So my Garmin is, unless I'm running, it's terrible. Like if I wear my Garmin in a
for heart rate.
Yeah, it'll tell me that my heart rate in the middle of Metcon's like 114. It's like,
I promise you it's higher.
But if I just, in the middle of that Metcon, if I go run, it'll get accurate as soon as I'm like 10 seconds into the run. But the polar straps, like a traditional heart rate strap, they blow those things away. Yeah. Just it's so accurate because it's measuring electrical impedance instead of using lasers to measure rate of blood flow.
So wait, you didn't like the HRV, not the heart rate, right?
No, I don't have any issues with HRV. I think
their read of the HRV.
No, so my issue was telling people their recovery score using HRV and making training decisions based on that day's HRV is not the appropriate way to use HRV. You have to use the trends to predict that. And I don't think that early on, this was probably 3 years ago that I think it was around early, 2020, almost said 2000, man. Am I getting that old? But I think early on their algorithm was not reading that. And I do think that their algorithm has gotten better. Like it definitely is closer to my subjective experience now than it was.
For sure.
All right. Sorry about the tangent.
Yeah.
Go back.
Well, as I said 2000 again, 2020.
Dude, I do that all the time.
As a side note, there are many people now that will talk about following the trends as opposed to a one day. Dr. Andy Galpin has a really good podcast with
shout out to the homie Andy.
Yeah.
I
Andrew Huberman, where he talks about this. He's like, hey, did you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We were drunk on a raft and we slammed into a pier. And we both he got sucked under the pier and then I got off and got on, jumped on the dock and then pulled his ass up.
We need to get him on a podcast. That'd be awesome.
We can.
I'd love listening to him. He does a really good job of explaining it in a layman's way, which I think we need. Too many people are talking at this higher level and then we can't actually apply it. And that's always the bottleneck from really good educators to those that know a lot but aren't good educators.
We just need to get ChatGPT to explain it to us like we're a golden retriever
Yeah.
puppy. And
Yeah.
the analogies that it gives when you ask it to explain something like you're a golden retriever puppy are hilarious and also really good.
We have gone off the
sorry.
deep end here.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
your fault.
Yeah, this is my fault.
Damn,
I'm going to shut up
Chris.
the rest of the episode. Go.
All right, so Kyle's favorite workout was event number 1. Mine would have been event number 4. I agree, though, event number 1 was very well programmed if the testing body is to be like CrossFit of the past. But we saw at the games last year, we saw with individuals this year that it looks like it is shifting away from that. So to your point earlier, it may be that age group semifinals looks very much like individual quarterfinals.
Yep. Skill bottlenecked
Correct.
versus this where it was more, engine and there were still skill components, but like rope
Sure.
climbs are a skill component. For myself, I don't consider rope climbs a skill component because it's something that I'm personally really good at. And I
Yeah.
don't think you do because you look at the sport as, through the lens of competitors, right?
Yeah.
So we don't think about that as a skill component, but there's a ton of skill that goes into being effective in rope climbs, especially for like, if you think about the bell curve of competitors that were in the age group qualifier, that's a high level skill.
Yeah, totally. I just don't think it's as high as or as important in that style of workout as maybe the end of the individual workout. So in other words, they did all the deadlifts, the chest to bars, the bar muscle ups. Their grip was fried, kind of like what your grip probably felt like in event 1. But then they had to do these rope climbs as fast as possible at the end of the workout, and it was 9.
Dense rope
Yeah,
climbs.
exactly.
Yeah, I think so. You said you really didn't like event 3, the shuttle run with the bottleneck, essentially the attempted bottleneck in the middle, which I don't think was a bottleneck for everybody. And then the shuttle runs again. I have 2 things here. So one, going into that workout, I really disliked the idea of doing 100 shuttle runs. Like I run 3 days a week. I try and accumulate like four-ish miles each time I run. So I spend a lot of time running, but I don't really have a lot of time. I haven't spent a lot of time doing shuttle
runs. Yeah.
So I was like really nervous that whether or not that running volume would translate over to the shuttles. And it didn't in the open workout. Like my shuttles in that open workout were horrible, but in this, where it was just continuous shuttles, I was able to fall into a similar kind of like cadence and rhythm that I would
Nice.
if I were doing longer runs. So even though before the workout, I would have said, man, this is not doing a good job of testing running, I actually do think that it at least touched on running capacity in a way that you can do it in a qualifier. Now, it was still super boring to run down and back, 200 or whatever times in total in that workout. Like that was super boring, but I also do think it actually tested what they were going for, which was to at least assess, can people run before they get to the semifinal where they're going to, qualify them for the games, where they're going to show up and have to do maybe a 5-mile ruck run.
Right.
They have to do it in some way.
Sure. I agree with you. And if
Do y'all
they
agree with Rich that it was the most, what did he say, the most boring workout?
well, I didn't do it. It was boring to watch. That's for sure.
It was probably the most.
Or he said the worst workout?
No, he said
The
most
most boring.
He said most
Oh, okay.
boring.
Yeah.
And I would say that for me, it was probably the most boring workout. But at the same time, like it also just kind of felt like I was doing my zone 2 work. So like not
Yeah.
that different than boring zone 2 work.
Right. Yeah. Well, if it felt like zone 2 the entire time, it probably wasn't challenging enough for you.
The first 50 felt like zone 2.
Yeah.
The
Oh, well,
second
you have to
50
push the
felt
last
like
50.
the end of a 5K.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's
Fair
what I'm
enough.
saying. It did a decent job of testing running capacity.
I never thought that it wouldn't test some of that, but it would be like saying, hey, now you're going to do for 500 meters arms only row, and then 500 meters a legs only row, and then the last 500 meters you can row as normal. That's still testing rowing. So those that are better at rowing likely will still do well at that test. But I would be more interested in just forcing I know it's hard with thousands of
give
people,
them ideas, Brannen.
but forcing the people to go to a track and they have to run in meters, measure it. They did that with the COVID games and it was complicated for sure. But something like that would be more interesting to me. I want to see you run a mile and I want to see you do 7 rope climbs, 25 bench press, 7 rope climbs, run a mile. That would be a more interesting test to me than just shuttle runs.
What I'd love to see is some outside entities pick up like something like Masters Fitness Collective or Legends, say, hey, we're going to host, a couple of semifinals, age group semifinals around the world. Now we can start to do some things where they bring in, assault runners
For sure.
and things like that and do in-person individual testing. Now it would require HQ to probably allow more people to qualify for semifinals. This is another topic that I think is really important. They only let 30 people through. The 35 to 39 men and women, we're going from 3,000 plus people down to 30.
Right.
That's insane. Like the number of people, there were, I think, only 4 people who were at the games last year in the 35 to 39 men who qualified for semifinals this year.
Yeah, it's insane.
Like, does that mean that your testing body last year wasn't very good and didn't get the right people through? Or does that mean that this field is just so deep and so good that there should be 50 or 60 people moving on to the next stage and then 20 moving on to the games?
Sure.
Like, what does that really say about the sport? Because it's not like those guys last year at the games, there were 9 35-year-olds and 1 38-year-old, Julian, our guy. So no one aged out. They were all back this year, but only 4 of them made it through.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it tells you 2 things. One, the field has gotten much deeper, right? With people like Rich that are coming in and now competing. That changes it. But 2, and probably even more importantly, the testing body changes who goes. CrossFit will never admit this because they always say, well, look, the best always win.
And they are right. Like Rich and Scott, like
only at the top end of the sport.
Well,
everything else
the games
is
champ from last year is in 3rd, right? So like there's your best, and the cream rose to the top here. So like they are right in that sense that the best are going to get through.
So only, again, the very, very best in the sport. But if we look at the people that we most often train, so the person that wants to make a semifinal or the person that wants to make quarterfinals, the testing body changes the dynamic of if they get in or if they don't get in by a lot, right? Yeah. And so that variance is, I think, important. And so as coaches, you got to be wise with how you program. We talked about that checklist earlier, and that's why we're always doing that. We're always checking and hedging our bets because we want to make sure everyone's as well-rounded as possible. But other than the very best in the sport, even those that are like bubble games athletes, they may be left out because of the testing body. So their argument that look at Rich, he won every year, or look at Frazier, it's like, yes, those guys would win no matter what, but there are very few of those people.
Yeah. I totally agree. And now a few of those people have aged into the Masters categories.
Exactly.
And it's making the Masters categories really, really competitive.
Yeah.
Personally, as someone who's competing in, I think it's super cool. Like I love the fact that we have, former games podium athletes in the division now. And, the 10 times CrossFit Games champ Rich in the division. I love it because it's going to get people to pay more attention to the Masters.
Yeah. Will it though? I guess that would be the next question that I have for you is how do we as a community and then as a sport in general, make Masters not more entertaining, but put a more of a focus on Masters? Because as you know, going to the games, that's not going to be the focus. And part of me understands. Most people want to watch the young athlete that can do everything and they do it amazingly well. But the more I coach Masters, the more that I see even the average Master that comes into our online program, the Masters that were here this weekend, they blow me away. You have 50, 55, 65-year-old men and women, or the 35-year-old that hasn't done CrossFit and all of a sudden gets really good, and they're giving it their all, just like the 20-year-old, and they can do these amazing things that sometimes are even more impressive. Like the 60-year-old, the 55-year-old that just cleaned 300 pounds in the qualifier is absolutely insane to me.
Yeah.
And so I wish we could put more of a light on that, and as an organization, we try to do that. We spend a lot of time with our Masters athletes, but it can't just be us. Like CrossFit has to be a part of this.
I have 2 points here. One is that I think it comes from some of the organizations like us, like Mayhem, like, I think it comes from the organizations putting an emphasis on Masters athletes and age group athletes, not just Masters, like age group athletes, period, for sure. Right? And I feel like this past weekend, I was here, obviously, because I was coaching athletes through our own individual quarterfinals, 2 weeks ago. And then I was here competing in the Masters, or, the age group quarterfinals this past weekend. And it didn't, the feel wasn't different. It felt like it was a professional environment in the same way that the individual quarterfinals were. And I think that is part of what's so important, is to make sure if we want to put an emphasis on Masters, we want to grow that portion of the sport, which is half of the open registrants, right? Half the people that compete in this sport are Masters athletes. So we need to make sure that we treat them as professionally at a minimum and serious and take it as seriously as the individuals, because it's half the field.
Yeah, agreed.
I think that's a huge part. And then I think the other one is to be done with 3 online qualifier stages to make it to the games. That has to be done in
100%.
the next, it doesn't have to be done this year, right? That's not going to happen. It doesn't have to be done next year, because I understand the logistics of it. It's an international sport, and you trying to make it so that there are 30 or 50 athletes traveling to 1 or 2 semifinals. Like the international travel won't work.
Right.
But there has to be some kind of solution here, whether it's Masters shifts from open, quarterfinals, semifinals, games to like a qualifying circuit where you go to live events to qualify for the
like
games.
that.
That's what it should, in my opinion, that's what it should be. Because
so in other words, like you'd go to Masters Fitness Collective, and if you get so many points there, you move on.
or
Legends.
you do the open, right?
Okay.
And you get your passport, right?
Okay,
So
okay.
once you've done the open, you get your passport, and then you have Masters Fitness, and they changed the timing of their events. Instead
Sure.
of being in September and October, November in the off season, now they become the qualifiers for the games. So instead of being late, they're now early in the year. And you have Granite Games, you have Wadapalooza, and you have Masters Fitness Collective, and you have Legends, and you have all of those major events, and you have overseas ones too, French Throwdown, German Throwdown, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? You have all those things, and the top 3 from each of those qualify for the CrossFit Games. That gets you people who can compete in live events, who can run, who can swim, who can bike, who can lift, and who can do CrossFit. Not just people who can do in the gym CrossFit, who show up at the CrossFit Games and can't do a 5-mile ruck run.
Right. So you're getting a more well-rounded testing body in person than you would otherwise.
Yeah. Interview all the people. Obviously, this is impossible, but like send a survey out to everyone who just competed in age group quarters and everyone who competes in age group semi, and ask them, do you guys want to do more online qualifiers, or ask them if they want to go compete in person?
For sure.
And I can absolutely guarantee you what the answer will be. You want to grow the Masters field? That's how you do it.
Well, I have Masters athletes that they don't even do the open anymore. They just go to Legends or Masters Fitness Collective or their local competitions because they do it for fun. Like, this is their hobby. They want to go and do the in-person competition because it's more enjoyable. You make connections. You get to, like, you're under the lights, so to speak. And that's just so much more fun as a competitor than doing it in your gym and saying your name and then doing a 5-minute workout.
100%. And I think in the end, we're all in this for, we're not all in this for fitness racing, but everyone who is a competitor is in it to race, right? I mean, that's why we're in this. We're in this to compete and race. And it's hard racing the clock and not knowing where anyone else is and not having scores and things like that. It's so much more of a race and so much more enjoyable. And from a spectator perspective, so much better to watch when you're watching people race in person versus, filming it. And the other thing is this amount of stress. Like, I'm exhausted.
Yeah, you were saying your body feels good, but your brain is brain fog.
I'm barely sore from doing all those workouts, but like my brain is just totally messed up from competing. And it's like, okay, because you got to have this measurement right. You got to make sure you measured all the stuff, and then you got to wait for your validation emails. And you got to, dude, the amount of stress that just go compete in person. If you get a no rep, fix your rep for the next one. You're not going to get your whole workout invalidated posthumously when you're all done.
I'd be interested to hear people in the comments how you would set it up, because I think that something should change. It's just very hard. CrossFit, they make a lot of changes, but it's just very rarely those that make sense.
Yeah, and you know what? If you're in the comments and you have a complaint, at least present a solution, right? Like that was, I've thought out this solution clearly quite a bit.
Speaking of, I want to talk about Event 2 real quick, and especially the strength test, but complaints. So that article went up on Morning Chalk Up where we talked about we brought in judges. Have you seen the comments?
They had an article about us?
Yeah. About they interviewed Adam, and basically they were like, Adam's like, look.
Hold on, what was the title of this article?
I don't know what the title was, but basically we brought judges in. So they interviewed Adam, and Adam's like, last year, all the coaches judged athletes, and we gave a lot of no reps, by the way. Like, I no repped Travis probably 15 times in a workout to where he was pissed at me. But I was like, look, I don't want you to get no reps in your video. So anyhow, we did all that, but we realized it's probably best if we just coach so that we're giving pacing strategies, warm-ups, cool downs, all of that, and we let judges
Not to mention organizing the whole fucking week.
Yeah. But so Adam says all of this, but in the quote that they took on the Instagram page was, we didn't think we did a good enough job judging, so we decided to hire judges. So, of course, people just read that.
Oh, really?
In the comments, it was like, how do these coaches not know what a pistol is and what an air squat? I'm like,
hey, I give them all a chance. They probably all suck.
I recused myself from judging my own athletes like 3 or 4, 3 or 4 years ago. I will not judge my athletes because I am a coach. That is what I am. And when someone is doing a workout, my number one goal is to make sure that they move on to the next stage or that they have the best performance that they possibly can be. My goal is not to hinder them in any way, shape, or form. So I should not be judging them. Like,
I agree.
And the conflict of interest is just too big.
Yes. And even you're still going to be an honest judge. If something is egregious, you're no repping them. But what we did is we basically said, hey, all of our amazing athletes, 30 plus semifinal athletes that we have, we're going to make you go to the highest standard possible. We have 6 game judges on site, and we're going to make sure that every single rep is perfect. So we're essentially telling our athletes it's going to be harder for you to qualify than Joe Schmo that's in their gym getting judged by their girlfriend who never gave them a no rep. And then people are hating in the comments saying, like, why would you guys need to hire judges?
Yeah, don't listen to those people. Were you going to tie this into number 2?
Yes.
Event 2?
That was, let me go off. All right.
Hit it.
The thing that surprised me about event number 2 is how strong the athletes are across all divisions now. So we were talking about this before we got on the podcast, but you did 330 pounds on your clean, right? And that was 76?
I think 74th.
74th. So there were 73 guys that cleaned over 330 pounds.
With non-functional legs. Because if they felt anything like I did, my legs were just not working.
Exactly. That is just absolutely like amazing to me. I would say, 2-3 years ago, 330 would probably be top 20.
So in 2020, the COVID year, I think I clean and jerked 335 might have been 325. And I was top 30.
Yeah. So the difference in just, a few years is 30 pounds or 40 pounds on a lot of these guys' lifts.
That was with no Metcon before it. We literally stood on that year we stood on a scale to get a tie break weight.
Oh, that's right.
And then we did 5 minutes to find a max.
I remember that. That's
so
insane.
there was no fatigue. And that was the first workout I did, right?
I remember.
And there's someone who cleaned 384 or something, like with that level of fatigue, that means that person's clean's got to be 400.
Right. Yeah. And
do you think there were 15-1A in it?
Sandbagging?
Sandbagging?
No, because that person qualified.
Yeah.
Like their score on the first part was good enough. On the GHD handstand push-up part was good enough to make it through.
There were people that definitely sandbagged, but it was fewer than you would think.
Yeah.
I looked at the scores, and a lot of people that had really good 2A scores that also had really good 2B scores. And it's not just in 35 to 39. The same thing for women in 35 to 39. Like the scores were amazing. There's so many strong women. But if you look up the field, 50 to 54, 55 to 59, 60 plus, there were guys and girls that were cleaning probably 15 to 25 pounds more than just a few years ago. And it was like 30 or 40 of them. So now if you're a master's athlete, we've said this for many years. Yes, you need to have all the skills. And I think still movement is the number one priority. Being, especially 50 plus, being able to get your arms overhead, being able to get into a deep squat. You have to have those, obviously, to do
it'll
the
help
sport.
you clean better, too.
Yes, for sure. But after that, you do need to do strength work. Like I know a lot of people keep saying like, no, just keep building your aerobic base. But it's like, it doesn't matter if we had a couple athletes that this happened to. They got top 20 or top 30 in every other event, but 350th or 400th in the clean event, you're out. So that is the bias is there, and you have to be able to do that well.
Yeah, and that means that you can't just be on an Olympic weightlifting program either. You have
Yes.
to be working on basic strength.
Yeah, totally.
Squat, deadlift, and bench press, everybody.
Yeah, I think the bench is here to stay, which I like. I think that's a good test.
Me too. You know I love it.
I don't have a problem with that. All right, any other thoughts on event 2 or any of the other events?
Hey, what about the bench showing up when it was off the list?
Yeah, I loved it. I love that people were unprepared for bench press because I love bench press.
Yeah, we had a
put
meeting.
out a list?
Go ahead.
No, that's it.
We had a meeting back in January, the compete coaching staff, and the equipment list comes out, bench isn't on there. And we, in that meeting, specifically said, we're going to keep it in every week or every other week because there's still a chance that CrossFit puts it in, and I think it's just well-rounded fitness
Do they
in general.
say that on the original thing? That
No.
things could come?
No, the very first list had bench press in it.
This was last year, though. When they revised the equipment list, there was no bench in it.
When I say that list, the one that came out in around December had bench press on the list. And then they put out a revised one in January that this was like the official equipment list for the season, and the bench press was not included.
And what that says to me is we are intentionally taking this out, telling us that we will not test this. And then obviously they still tested it. But my point saying when we had that meeting, all of us agreed it's probably smart to just keep this in because we never know with CrossFit what they're going to do. But it's also, that is the thing that is most disappointed to me. Like outside of the judging standards and all the other stuff that people are talking about right now, if you have a list, stick to the list. Don't change it. And especially for those that are most predisposed to pec injuries would be those that are older masters.
Yeah, masters athletes who are unprepared for a movement.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why, as a coach, if something has come out before then it stays in your rotation. It stays in your list or whatever, your
For sure.
checklist, whatever you want to call it, stays in your rotation for all time.
Yeah. And another cool thing, like for coaches out there that maybe you have some masters athletes, you could do that without a lot of bench press. You could do other variations. You could do dip variations. I did a lot of straight arm, like strict gymnastics work to start, where it was, front leaning rest holds or support holds and different variations like that in the off season. If someone has a shoulder injury or things that they don't want to press a lot, but you have to have something to support that in case 25 bench press does come out in a qualifier.
Yeah, I try to rotate through. I don't want to give away too many programming secrets on the podcast, but I try to rotate through heavy bench press. So like in a 3-week rotation, heavy bench press, double dumbbell bench press, but for reps, probably not in a Metcon, just like AMRAP -1s,
Sure.
As many reps as possible, leave 1 or 2 in reserve, and then ring dips, whether weighted or something like that. And I just rotate through those things. Maybe every once in a while I'll throw bench press in a Metcon if I'm trying to really fatigue someone's press. It might be like bench press, handstand walk, strict handstand push up, handstand walk,
that last week.
bench press, something like that. But keep it in the rotation. It takes bench press is like one of those movements. It takes up 15 minutes once a week.
Yeah.
It's just quick.
To your point, I think it helps with everything else that you do. So your ring muscle ups, your dip out of the rings, your dip out of the bar muscle up, all of those little things. Burpees.
Especially for women who are, weaker pressers, getting their bench press strong will help them develop a pop in their burpee. And if they can develop a pop in their burpee, then that translates to just way, way faster burpees, even under high levels of fatigue.
Yeah.
And before we started, you had said that there was something you loved about this. Did we already hit on that? Loved about the age group qualifier so far?
Yeah, event number 1 and event number 4, I think they nailed.
I loved event 2, and I loved the strength test afterwards. So three of the 4 tests I loved, and actually, I don't hate test 3, the shuttle rope climb bench test, as much as I hated the idea of it. Now that I've done it, I'll put it that way.
Do you think we're going to retire shuttle runs for a while?
I hope that the Masters athletes, now that we've done it in both the first 2 stages, can retire it for the rest of the season, and we can just say, all right, we've tested enough shuttle running that like that part of the testing body is done. Let's do age group semis. We've already proved that everyone that qualified in the top 30 can run because we did 100 of them. We did a mile of shuttles essentially, so like everyone can run. Let's be done with shuttles and let's just test running at the games.
Nah, it's going to be weighted vest shuttle runs coming soon.
Chris, no, man, no. I mean, I'm doing the age group semi, so like I'll be ready to run shuttles, but I hope that they're done with that.
Yeah, you'll touch shuttles, but you'll probably do more long distance or at least like linear distance running, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And they should test running. Running should be tested in semifinals, and it should be tested at the games. On average, it's tested over 4 times for individuals. I don't know how much it is for masters. I have that in a document, but
2 or 3.
Yeah, so I think it makes sense. It's to me one of the best tests that we don't get exposed to early. Obviously, they did it this year in the Open and the quarterfinals, but it's so much. I know you said it felt like running, but it's much different if you had to do a 2-mile run into a hard Metcon as opposed to shuttle runs.
I would have personally much preferred that.
Yeah,
personally,
for sure.
But
You've been doing you have built your engine or your running base all year, preparing for that. But most people haven't.
No, it's true.
Any final thoughts on those?
I can't wait to see what they throw out for us at semifinals. It's going to be wild. It's going to be wild again.
Yeah.
All right, and for those who hung in there, Brannen's score. Brandon, what do you think you got?
Okay, can I predict
15.5. Yeah.
What it had to be 620.
Did you qualify? Did you qualify for regionals that year?
No, because
he was 322 in the world.
320. Oh, he was 320. Good God, you were so good back then, Brannen.
I would say 620 something.
Okay,
right?
I think he
630.
I was 620.
620. Yeah, so we had to be the exact same.
I think he beat me. I'm going to give him 618.
Oh, Kyle Ruth nailed it.
No way.
Was it really
Yeah.
618?
Yeah.
Wow.
Nice job, dude.
Nice.
I cannot.
I would guess we were probably close on almost everything.
As a soon-to-be 38-year-old, I cannot beat 24-year-old Brannen. How
You were
old
close.
you in 2015?
I don't know.
It says you were 25.
25. I cannot beat 25-year-old Brannen.
All right, and that's all the time we have. Make sure you hit that unsubscribe button, leave us a dislike, and a mean comment. See you next time. Hope you enjoyed this convo with Brannen and Kyle. To watch Kyle do age group quarterfinal workout number 4, check out this clip right here.